The Jaguars have obvious players that they need moving forward, but they also have some players that are just winners that they cannot afford to lose. We'll talk about it today on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Shout out to the everydayers that join us each and every day here on Locked On Jaguars, because it is your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen. We are also a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is the #1 sports podcast network. And we're glad to have you join us because it is your team every day. All right, man. Let me tell you what we're going to discuss today here on the big show. Normally, by the way, I'm Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast. We're talking yesterday about how you can continue to build your team when you're not swapping out ones, but you're demoting twos by elevating people, and that's how you're going to get better. Basically, you can swap out one for one, or you can swap out one for number three and push number two down to number three and the old number one down to number two. So we're going to talk today about guys that personified Jaguars football that I don't think should leave. We'll do more explaining that in the first segment. Second segment, we'll start naming people and then talk about retention and duplication, like how you can get those guys, but get a whole bunch of them so that the team continues to have an identity. And then third and final segment, some guys we need to see more from before we put you in this category. Before we start eliminating dudes and saying who's in what category, we're basically talking about players that are under contract that we know of or that the Jaguars have, and maybe they can do something to retain them, but mainly the young players. We're talking about guys that can grow into and through the program and eventually become starters or become people that the team can depend on enough that they're not trying to replace them, because getting better comes at replacing players. It also comes from development within, and there's a delicate balance that you have to have. Because what it does too, when you're the team making the decisions, it allows you to stay a little bit ahead of the curve in terms of what you can expect from a projection standpoint. Remember, they re-signed Cole Van Lannon. James Gladstone pointed out that one of the reasons they were able to do that is because they assessed the offensive line of the offensive tackle market, and they knew getting him buttoned down would give them an advantage in the market where they would not have an opportunity to get better with him, or if he was out there on the market, he could have priced them out a little bit. So that's the foresight you have to have when you're trying to hit this team building thing from multiple areas. You got like free agency, you got the draft, you have team needs, but you also need to do everything you can to either get rid of some of your needs through development or be able to fully identify whether or not you need what you think, and you have to have foresight and able to be able to do that. So we're going to talk about some guys who I believe personify what Jaguar football is. I'll tell you right now, Dewey Wingard is not on the list, but he represents something that is very, very important about people who I think they need to keep. And Dewey Wingard has that it factor, that thing that makes you want to keep him around. And while I'm sitting here trying to cut him, I'm sitting here imagining that he's figuring out a way to make this football team and continue to be a Jacksonville Jaguar. Those are the type players I'm talking about, but I'm just talking about with a higher upside. You got me? So he represents every single thing, but when you're going to elevate, sometimes you're going to elevate beyond the talent level of people that have all the intangibles, but you actually want to get better at that position. So not one person in the offseason has disagreed with my assessment that I think they need to get better and more sticky on the back end. Dewey is a vested veteran who will cost you a little bit more. He also plays a lot of minutes. So if you need to get better, you're going to have to either replace the dudes that replace a lot of minutes or get guys behind them that can push them, or do both. So I'll start right in the secondary. Jaryan Jones is my guy, and he's not in threat of leaving. He's only in his second year after this season, so contractually he's there. But I think the Jaguars should look just beyond this year and look at that as, listen, especially if you're going to move Travis Hunter around a little bit. And then you saw this year what him and Jordan Lewis simultaneously being hurt did to the secondary. It had them scrambling some. There is nothing wrong with you finding a dude that is your dime corner, who also can give you the versatility to play inside out, who also prepares, acts, walks, talks like Jaryan Jones. If this team wins a championship, he'll be probably the swing corner on a team that wins the championship. But the thing that I love about Jaryan Jones is just as fast as I can say that, he's going to work as if he's going to be the starter, and it's going to be super, super hard for them to push him out. This is what's called that combustion and that friction that I'm talking about that comes from guys that are like this, that are all about competition. And he will apply himself at corner, at nickel, at outside, on the right side, left side. He'll even play safety if you want him to, and he'll play special teams. This is the type of dude that you want around on your team, because even if you put him at number 4, he's going to act and prepare as if he's number 1. Sounds a little bit like Parker Washington, doesn't it? And these are the things that the Jaguars will know as they're, sitting here trying to fortify their draft position and stock up and build their roster. They know these things now, whereas with Parker, they didn't know it. They saw it, and they even hinted. They said, is this real? Because last year was their first year with him, but now they know it's real. And I expect him to be here for a while, and I expect Jaryan Jones to be here for a long, long time too. And I love the fact he's the type of dude that if you keep trying to replace him, he's going to keep giving you a more and more difficult decision to make. And when you think about it, that's exactly what they want. Coaches don't want to break you. They want to try to break you. And then the more that they can't, they got to try harder. And that means everybody's trying harder. These are the type of people that you want on your team. It's easy to look at the starters. It's easy to say, well, like yesterday I did a show, hey, we got to keep Trayvon. We got to keep Anton Harrison. Yeah, but there's always this other group of guys that are the glue guys to your team that you need in a pinch. The playoffs is full of guys that continue to help their team and make plays. Even when these games are really, really close, you're advancing based on 1 or 2 plays, either good or bad, from the guys on your team. Y'all know the Jaguars moved on from Ron Miles, the secondary coach. And apparently right before I started this, the Jaguars apparently made another hire. Yeah, they're hiring defensive backs coach. He was the cornerbacks coach from Miami. I got to figure out how to pronounce his name here a little bit. It's Matthew Araujo. It's how I'm going to do it today. It's either Araujo or Araujo. It's one of the two. Been in Miami for 4 years. That means that he does have a connection with Anthony Campanile. I don't know if that connection in and of itself is the reason, that they're moving in this direction. But obviously with the miscommunications in the playoff games, something had to give. When you have communications 18 games into the season, that probably means somebody has been doing something wrong all year. So Ron Miles is gone. They're going to bring in someone else that these guys are very, very familiar with, another young, energetic coach on the back end. And hopefully that'll bode well for the Jaguars, because I know everybody's sitting there wondering what they're going to do. It looks like Grant Udinski actually might get the Cleveland job, but we don't know about Anthony Campanile. He interviewed in Baltimore as well. But either way, the Jaguars will be fine. They'll be fine either way. But we're going to name some more players. I named Jaryan Jones as one. There's another player in the secondary and 2 that play along the front 7. We'll get to that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. All right, today's show is sponsored by Drip Drop. Kicking off the year is feeling good, and the goal is to feel good. And honestly, hydration is the easiest win. When I stay on top of it, my energy, focus, and mood all level up. But let's be real, plain water doesn't always cut it, especially when you're grinding through the days, hitting the gym, or just trying to stay consistent with your health goals. That's where Drip Drop comes in. Doctor-developed, proven fast hydration that helps your body and mind work together. Think clearer, focus, better energy, elevated mood, even that fresh skin glow. That's right, man. A Drip Drop science-backed formula is trusted by firefighters, medical professionals, and over 90% of top college and pro teams because it rehydrates you faster and more effectively than water alone. Right now, Drip Drop is offering podcast listeners 20% off your first order. Go to dripdrop.com and use the code LOCKEDONNFL. That's dripdrop.com. Promo code locked on NFL for 20% off. Stock up now at dripdrop.com and use the promo code locked on NFL. And today's show is also sponsored and brought to you by Robinhood. What if sports traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long and use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. What it is people moving the action. So when momentum shifts, you can move right along with it. I always knew the game, but never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play by play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood, now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futures and cleared swaps trading involves significant risk and is not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives, LLC, a registered futures commission merchant and swap firm. All right, we're moving and grooving here on Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day, talking about the type of players the Jaguars have on their rosters that while they play a lot now, will always press to play a lot, but you always try to replace them, and then that creates a certain amount of competition. These are good players that I want to see on this roster for a long time. And another one of those guys that I mentioned, Jaryan Jones already. Another one I mentioned is safety Antonio Johnson. That is the dude that's backing up Andrew Wingard. I like AJ. I think he's played a lot better, especially down the stretch in these bigger games. I really like Antonio Johnson, and I think he needs to elevate himself to move up to that Dewey Wingard spot if Dewey Wingard is no longer on the team. You have to think that Rayon Lane, who plays the other safety spot behind Eric Murray, is going to factor in, as well as Caleb Ransaw, a kid that kind of plays the nickel, plays a little safety, plays some corner. Missed the entire season with an injury to his lower leg, I think to his foot, maybe a Liz Frank or something like that. But they expect him to have a full recovery. So if you think about it that way, they should have 4 dudes already, but they're probably going to have 5 because this is the spot where I think they'll go out and also draft somebody and create that competition that we're talking about. Draft someone that they believe can play early and often at free and strong safety that's interchangeable. This is why I kept talking about the 2 dudes that played for the Miami Hurricanes, to watch them in the game. Shout out to Indiana for winning. I'm a Florida State fan, but those individuals are still folks that you have to look at and think, they can play. Safety from USC is a pretty good player with a lot of range. Just want them to be able to play with a lot of oomph, if you will, if y'all know what that means. It's just a lot of determination, a lot of quickness, a lot of speed, a lot of confidence, right? That's the way you want it to go. On the defensive line, also, there's so much talk about whether the Jaguars should trade for people. We were looking for depth and proven quickness from young players to back up both Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker. The Jaguars absolutely got that this year, and it befuddles me that this is the year now that people say, well, let's swing for the fences and go get Max Crosby. That's fine if you're going to trade somebody other than Trayvon, but if you're not, don't even think about it. BJ Green and both him and Danny Striggow are exactly what you want. They were able to push out Emmanuel Ogbah and able to penetrate and get some playing time. Dwan Smoot was still there and was still playing, but these guys actually went to a room full of veterans, guys that are making more money than them, and were able to kind of bully themselves as rookies into a playing time situation. I just think that's cool and that's good, and that's where it needs to be. Now, that's not telling you that I think the Jaguars should not look at that position. Of course you do, because it creates more and more competition. No matter how much you win, you're going to have a bunch of draft choices every year unless you sacrifice them all and gave them away. But you're going to have opportunities to go out in free agency. You're going to have opportunities to go into the draft, even if you are the Super Bowl champion, and you're going to get better. So this falls into that area yesterday that I talked about. Is it an absolute team of need? No, but it's a position that has so much value that It ain't about whether need or not. If a dude can play and you can fit it into your system, you do it, and then you figure everything else out. That's kind of the way I look at it with edge rushers. So while I do expect them to either move on the what they'll probably do is instead of having 5 or 6 guys, condense it down to 4. It means if they go out and get one dude where they pay him decent money to be the third swing guy, and then still have these 2 dudes as the 4th and the 5th guy, I can see them pulling that off and getting away with it. But you need to press that from all sides and all ends. And I think these 2 young cats have a lot. There's some dudes that I want to see more from before I put them in this category. The other one, and one of them plays in the secondary, is Monteric Brown. I don't know. I just don't know. I can't sit here and keep talking about guys that I want to be more sticky and talk about dudes that I want to be in a certain position and handle things a certain way, but want to keep everyone. And Monteric's a homegrown kid. I just think that there's some limitations. I do believe that he's a good player for depth, and he could be a good candidate for the dude that could be that 5th corner for a team that wins. But investing a lot in him right now and keeping him around as a surefire starter or one of the top 3 corners, that may hinder you a little bit from going and getting somebody else. And that's a decision and a choice that they're going to have to make that may or may not be – it may or may not be something that they think about based on what he believes his market is. And somebody will probably be willing to overpay for him a little bit because they'll need something. So if I had to guess, I'd say no, he doesn't come back. And even James Gladstone, when he was talking about Travis Hunter's role, he mentioned that there were a couple of players that would be free agents. One of them is Monteric Brown. The other one is who I don't, by the way, expect back. The kid that they traded for from the Cleveland Browns. I don't think Greg Newsome is going to come back. I don't. I don't see a reason for him to do it. Even if he tries to be their depth guy, I just think he thinks he has a lot more football left in him, and he ain't gonna be anybody's backup. And see, the Jaguars are in the point where they're trying to improve. So when you're 13-4 and you're trying to improve, people will be like, "No, don't get rid of this guy. Don't get rid of that guy. Don't get rid of that." That's not how it works. You can't look at yourself as a 13-4 team that's trying to improve. You got to look at a team that went home early and you're trying to improve. And I think that's what the Jaguars are going to do. I'm going to mention some more names. A couple of them, they're along the offensive line, guys that I want to see more from. They're nowhere near in a position where the Jaguars are going to trade them away, or they're nowhere near where the Jaguars can definitively say that they can press and push for a starting position. We'll talk about Wyatt Milam and Jonah Manheim in just a second on Locked On Jaguars. All right, today's show is sponsored and brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. You know, man, it is officially playoff mode. We got the semifinals left in every game during the NFL playoffs. FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action. Because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Open your profit boost pack first thing on game day and see what boost you want to apply. The boost lets you lean into your game day instincts. Whether you're backing momentum, defense, quarterback play, or coaching, the boost gives you more juice on the bet you already like instead of forcing you to bet something new. Every play feels bigger, and the boosts make your bets feel that way too. You make your picks, then you apply your profit boost to go after even bigger payouts while the playoffs get rolling. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. And today's show is brought to you and sponsored by Indeed. If you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. Whether when you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, you need to trust Indeed-sponsored jobs. Hiring Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed's sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidate faster. I've done it. I've opened barbershops and I've opened other businesses. And if you don't get the right person, the first person isn't always the right one. You want to do it right, or you'll be doing it all over again. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results. Use Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show get $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. All right, moving along here on Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day. I will always be here every day for you, just like I always am. However, if you want a little bit more coverage, get down in that description and click on the link to the Everydayers Club. You get more access to our app stores as well as ad-free versions of our shows and a little bit more. Make sure you tap into that down in the description of wherever you watch or listen to Locked On Jaguars. That's the Everydayers Club. All right, man. I'm going to mention a couple more players, Wyatt Milam and Jonah Manheim. Not a big enough sample for me to say whether or not both of those guys are part of the future of the starting lineup for the Jaguars down the line, but enough that I want to see more. Enough that I'm comfortable putting both of them in that top 8 rotation that is available on game days. And I think with another offseason, they'll both have a chance to prove their value. Not to the point, though, where I wouldn't draft someone to create more competition, someone versatile. I'd do that in a heartbeat. I think going for a guard/tackle, whether that be in free agency or I keep seeing a lot of Elijah Vera Tucker stuff, whether that be free agency or the draft, the Jaguars seem to pride themselves on guys that can do multiple things and have versatility on the offensive line. But they don't seem to be sacrificing guys that do one thing well for a dude that just does a whole bunch of things okay. So we'll see how that goes. But certainly there's some young players in the draft. I'd like to see them add 2 young offensive linemen each cycle, unless they get to the point where they really, really start nailing it and these guys are really young, and then maybe you can go 2 1 year, 1 the next. But over a 2-year period, you always want to draft about 3 guys, I believe, over a 2-year period to create competition, to create value, chess pieces for you to move around. You load to have more and have to make a tough decision along the offensive line than not have enough and then have to start reaching for things, because that's where you get holes in your line and holes in your game plan because you can't execute certain things. So with Tony Boselli being in that building, I also look, they did it last year. They drafted 2 guys and they signed 4 in free agency, 3 or 4 in free agency. So they're going to attack the offensive line. A couple of those signs were like 1-year deals. Matter of fact, Fred Johnson isn't even here anymore. Nothing precluded them from being able to the Cole Van Landen signing kind of precludes them from getting a left tackle this year. But it seems like to me they already know that. That's why they did it. And when you add his money and Walker Little's money, you got 2 players for the price of 1 like very, very good player. If you really want to think of it that way, I don't know if they do. I don't even know if Walker Little's still going to be here or not. But I would believe that Walker Little is one of the biggest poker chips they have if they're trying to get more draft capital and move around. I just don't know when they're going to do it, if they're going to do it, or if they want to just keep him there and have him hang around as your swing guy. When you start looking at it, the swing capabilities of him and Pat McCary, as well as those 2 young people, those young players I just brought up, you see a lot of versatility, but then that's where you probably need to see, okay, if those 4 guys are non-starters or close to being starters, but not really. And then you have Anton Harrison, Ezra Cleveland, Cole Van Landen, and Robert Hainsey that you know are your starters. That's where you got room for 1 stud. Whether he's a pure guard or a guard tackle, just somebody you know will come in and be either a young player or in free agency, preferably a young player, that'll come in and you go, there he is right there. There's your starter. There's one of your 2 or 3 best offensive linemen right there from the day he walks in here. There's your starter. Now, there's your 9. There's your 9. And then if you draft another guy that looks kind of good, and now you got to sit here and go, okay, walk a little. We might need to move on from you. And this is how I expect it to look. So you got 8 now. You get another guy that's 9. That's your stud dude. And then if a young guy can show you enough that you can then move on from somebody. So that's what I'm saying. I don't know if it'll be before or after the draft or if they're thinking about it at all. But y'all can kind of tell I'm a little bit done with Walker Little. That doesn't mean that they are, but just because I am doesn't mean anything. So the main thing for me is to continue to retain your good players and duplicate them, especially the ones that have a certain ilk about them. And it's not a shtick because that's an act, but the ones that have a certain way about them that can continue to add to your culture of your football team. When the players do the work, the coaches don't have to do it. So you got guys you need to see more from. You got guys that you've seen enough to know that they warrant being here, whether it's in a starting spot or not. The good thing about the people that I mentioned are they're going to try to start and they're going to consider themselves a starter, whether you do or not. And that attitude is what creates the kind of competition you need. You need a whole team full of people that think like Parker Washington. You need a team full of people that think like Jaryan Jones. You need a team full of people really that think like Foyola, because that thinks that they're trying to replace you every single year. That is a part of the gig. That is a part of it, to live on the edge, to actually be friends and hang out and be workmates with people that are trying to take your lunch money. That's what makes it so unique in the NFL. And it doesn't just make it unique from a player standpoint. It makes it unique from a management standpoint, because you may end up having to let go guys that do everything you ask them to do, but another guy is just a little bit better. That's the only way you're going to get better in the league. That's the only way you're going to live up to your dreams. And that's the only way Jacksonville Jaguar fans are going to be super, super happy about the progress of this football team, is to know it's refreshing, and it might seem a little bit heartless, but you just got to know that these guys are doing every single thing they possibly can in order for this football team to advance. And don't let the nice guy stuff fool you. It'll be a meritocracy. Whoever earns it will get it. But you can't put guys in a position to earn it if you're just conceding that all the spots are taken. This is why I used that sell word the other day. And James Gladstone kind of crazy said, it ain't about selling. It's about telling the truth. And it's good that people know that you'll stick to your word. A good way to get people to come in here and do everything you want them to do, which raises the level of the floor of this team, is to let them know that whatever you earn, you're going to get. No matter where you were picked, no matter where you were signed, no matter how much money the dude has in front of you, or how little money you're making, whatever you earn, you're going to get. And when you can hold and be true to that, and you're not trying to be right about your draft picks, or you're not trying to be right about your $10 million wide receiver decisions, when you remove your ego, that's when you leave room for progress. And I think the Jacksonville Jaguars are in a prime position to be able to do that. I'm in a prime position to be here each and every day with you here on Locked On Jaguars, because that's what we do. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, part of the #1 sports podcast network. And I'll be here tomorrow. We're going to keep talking about draft stuff and all of that. And then, of course, another squad show today on Wednesday with Mia O'Brien, who runs the Jaguar Squad Show. I'm very proud to be a part of it, along with her and Marquise Ogden. We'll see you then. Until then, you guys take care. Enjoy. Don't take me for granted. I don't take you for granted. 28 and a half minutes with y'all today, and it seemed like it went by in 5 minutes. Y'all take care. We'll see you later.